Welcome to Ladies in Law, where real-world advice meets professional wisdom and empowerment in realms of law and business. Your hosts, Lisa Goucher, Dawn Smith, and Kellye Raymond, bring you innovative strategies, practical guidance, and inspirational stories. Join us as we inspire and support women to thrive in traditionally male-dominated fields. We're here to promote inclusivity and provide practical advice for success. Hi, Lisa here with Kellye and Dawn, and today we are talking about facing adversity, resilience, adaptation, personally in the work environment, all across the board. So I'm going to start with Dawn.
I thought she was going to start with me.
Like that one. Well, it was funny because we were kind of throwing around this topic idea. And so we have this text string where all of us kind of communicate back and forth. We're trying to get Kellye on Slack, but she is resisting us.
Resistant to technology.
And we're going to get her on that Slack is the last thing I do by the end of the summer. That's my goal. But
maybe that's an episode right there.
It could be technology.
Millennials resistant to technology.
100%. But we were just talking about resilience and how important resilience is in business and in any business and in law especially. So, one thing that I want everyone to know is that Kellye Raymond, to my left, she's never experienced any adversity in her life, and she didn't really know what she'd talk about today. So she's not going to say anything. This will be all about me and Lisa.
Yes, all of our adversity.
Here's the thing that I was thinking about as we were brainstorming this idea is that, I grew up, my father was in the Army. We always joke that the Army keeps you very comfortably poor, right? But I grew up very middle class. I'm obviously just like a regular old blonde white chick. And so when I think about people really experiencing adversity in our whole world, I was just like, I've had a pretty good life, and I didn't have to struggle to get into college. I wasn't the first one in my family to get a higher education. I feel like there are so many people that really struggle with what I'll call real adversity. And so that was kind of my initial jumping off point. But then I thought about, adversity as it relates to business. And a lot of the adversity that I have experienced is usually a hell of my own making. And so I'm like, can I really complain about the resiliency that I had to find in order to get through the problem that I usually have created?
I think that happens a lot, though. I think we create a lot of our own problems.
Yeah,
I really do. Yeah.
So with the understanding that we know that there are people that experience real tragedies and real adversity, we're going to talk about
we're going to scale it back a bit.
The baby T traumas in that we have dealt with in our respective businesses.
Right, exactly. I mean, because three blondes, we haven't had it that bad. But I don't know, coming up and creating a business, there are adversities. Trying to find people that you work with, that you get along with, building teams, there are adversities every day. But really what I wanted to talk about is resilience and building a culture of resilience in your workplace, in your family, in your children. I mean, because I really think with resilience, you're able to move forward. Some people just get stuck and you just kind of on that repeat, rewind. And, what I wanted to talk about and just get your insight, both of you, is how do you move forward? How do you build that resilience in your organization or in your family to move forward?
Well, in an organization, you have to, goes back to communication again. Like if there's an issue, you've got to resolve it, and you just have to pick yourself up. Like you can't be pointing fingers like you did this, and you did this. Collectively, you come together and you have to figure out the solution. Personally, to me, I just cannot stay stuck. Like that's just inherent in and of myself. I cannot stay stuck. I'm a competitive person. I'm not competitive with others. I am just personally competitive. So the resilience just kind of cultivated itself for me personally out of that vein. It came very naturally. When I started into the court reporting business, I didn't know anything. I was a paralegal. And in some respects, that was a blessing because what you don't know, you don't know. So you just move forward each day trying to figure out how you're going to solve problems. I mean, really, that's what business turns into, is solving problems. There's issues that present themselves, and how are you going to solve those problems? If you decide you're not going to solve the problems anymore, then you're obviously not going to be moving forward. So the resilience is required. It's just inherent, I think, in leaders. You have to be resilient to figure out how you're going to be better, how you're going to grow, how you're going to expand. Or maybe you're at a place where you recognize you've done too much. So, for instance, when I had my previous court reporting firm, the mindset was to take over the world. And it cost a lot of money to take over the world. I'm just going to tell you.
How much does it cost to take over
very
the world?
Expensive, very, very expensive. We hired sales reps all over the United States, like 6 of them, a couple on the East Coast, couple on the West Coast, couple in the mid-region of the country. And just thought that because the program that we had, that how I grew the business, that everybody could grow the business that same way. And I learned that, not everybody does everything the same as far as sales go. You've got some that are handed clients that they maintain and cultivate. And then you've got the bootstraps type of people, which I'm the bootstraps type of people, where you just get out there, you beat the streets, you cultivate the business. And I got to the point where we'd spent lots of money on marketing, on a person to cultivate all that. And I realized I don't want to take over the world anymore.
It was too painful.
It was costly. Yes.
Well, I think that is certainly one of the adversities that I have faced in business, is growing the business. And I think that is sort of the dream, right? You start a business, it comes from nothing. The whole sort of measure of success is, can you grow the business? Are you busy? That certainly looks different depending on which field that you're in. For me, I've really struggled with finding good help. When a lawyer hires a jury consultant, it usually is a personal thing, right? They are hiring you as opposed to a method per se, or any kind of court reporter can come in. Yes, there are varying degrees of skill and all the different things that go into that. But if you hire a court reporter, you know what you're going to get, right? Every jury consultant is so different. And so lawyers really do like to connect sort of on a personal level with the consultant that they're working on. And so I've really struggled with, if I've got 4 jury selections set on the same day and I have not figured out how to clone myself yet, how do I find good help that I can say, you know what, Dawn, I'm not available to help you, but I'm going to send Lisa in my place and she's going to do a great job. I mean, that's just, unfortunately, that is
like, nope, don't send anybody else.
Yes,
Kellye.
right. And so therein lies the crux, right? But it certainly doesn't help that the folks that I have tried to bring in and bring along, for varying reasons, I've really struggled with being able to have sort of a go-to right-hand woman, and aside from my assistant Gabby, who runs my world. But I think the thing for me that I've learned along the way is that I struggle with the communication, right? So if I've got an associate helping me out with certain things, I tend to sort of just let myself be annoyed by the things that they're not doing correctly, and just sort of just move on, right? As opposed to being more upfront with my communication and saying, okay, here are the things that you're doing well. Here are a couple of things, like, don't ever do that. Don't show up to court late, kind of
basic things. Why do you have to say that?
That's the struggle. I know that's kind of where I struggle with, if we're dealing with basic things like showing up on time. And in fact, I told somebody, this was years ago, listen, like, I will teach you everything that I know. I can't set your alarm for you. And so things like that, I find myself like very quickly checking out. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If I'm checking out on somebody who has shown up late to court more than once, that's sort of like the baseline benchmark of behavior that I just can't help you with. But I think there are other instances where I need to do a better job of being communicative and saying, here are things we need to work on better, as opposed to just being annoyed by those things and just moving on. And I'll just do everything myself, because that's not a good place to be either.
I think resilience has to come from a place of, okay, this happened, but how are we going to get through it? As opposed to, it was terrible and this happened and quitting, right? Or this is a pattern and this happens over and over again. I mean, that is not going to help anybody get anything done at all. Somehow you have to kind of shift, take it in, kind of feel what's happening, sit back, and start solving the problem. I love The Martian. That's one of my favorite movies.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
It's really good. So it's about traveling to Mars.
Okay.
So I like these.
Bring it home for us.
I love some of these end of the world movies, right? Because I just feel like it helps me realize that what I'm doing is not so hard, right? And it's Matt Damon. He's the star of the movie, and he gets stuck on Mars. This sounds ridiculous talking about it.
Waiting for his resiliency.
Yeah, he's trying to grow the plants. I remember now.
Well, right. And he's like, he comes back from Mars. He makes it, in case, spoiler alert, he makes it back. But when he's talking to a class, he's teaching future astronauts, he says, you just solve the problem that's in front of you. Solve that one problem, and then you solve another problem, and then you solve another problem, just by making it, putting everything in manageable bites, as opposed to just taking all of it and being like, oh my God, how am I getting through this?
So I think that's super helpful. I'm curious, for both of you, you've both been in the position so many times where you can't show up to a hearing. You're not showing up and physically doing the court reporting. How do you get to a place where you are saying, I'm going to trust that this other human being is going to show up and do a good job?
It's really hard.
Okay, that was my biggest challenge, going from working as a paralegal where I could control everything. I could control the workload. I can control who worked with me. If it didn't work, I just, did it myself, work longer hours. But then when I went to the court reporting firm, I'm not a court reporter. I'm not a videographer. I had to learn how to trust, and I turned into a really good damage control type person. And it used to really stress me out. So if an issue presented itself, I would be on the phone with the attorney. So I just say it's a personal growth thing that, you either decide you're going to do it and push through for personal growth to get to the next level. And it does get better. It does get easier. Do I like doing damage control? No.
You're really good at it.
But it's not nearly as stressful. So thank you. When there's an issue that presents itself, I typically give 2 or 3 options to whoever I'm talking to, and them just giving them ownership on the ability, even if there's really only one option and the other 2 are ridiculous. If you give somebody 3 options, they feel like they have control over what necessarily is not unfolding the way that, you wanted it to unfold. And I said this, and I'm so glad that this wasn't the case. So when I was started at the court reporting firm, and we just had a lot of success really quick. It was just a blessing. It was a godsend. It was
things just align
unbelievable.
The right way. Yeah.
I had went from paycheck to paycheck to just an unbelievable living in a short amount of time. And I remember getting excited, but I would tamper the excitement because I knew that on the heels of that, something difficult, challenging, or bad would happen.
Kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And then just personally, I figured out, okay, well, I would give up the highs to bring up the lows to be this. Oh my goodness, how boring would that have been? And so then I just was like, all right, the wins are going to be woohoo, hands in the air, we're going to party like we don't care. And then when the other shoe dropped, and, a client would threaten to pull the business, I just went into that mode. So I'll tell you, Kellye, that is the most challenging thing, is to build a trust in other people.
I think that's a great sort of lesson to take away, though, is that if you are celebrating the win in business, I don't care what your business is, there's ebbs and flows. There are times where things are looking great and everything is going smoothly, and then sure enough, times where everything is going to shit. And so I think really stockpiling the wins, right?
Yes, even if they're little.
Yes.
They add up. It creates momentum.
Yeah.
We were talking about that. Momentum.
I think that's so smart because you're stockpiling the wins. It's going to give you energy to handle the depletion that will inevitably come with business. Dawn, you just kind of dealt with some adversity depletion with some associates, right?
Right.
Turning their notices in. Let's talk about that and how you kind of are moving forward.
Well, I mean, you have to have duplicity. You have to have processes in place. You have to plan for that. I mean, when you have a business and you're trying to grow something like Curtis and I are, I mean, we have big dreams. We, we're practicing nationally now. We're in 20 states. We have 20 lawyers, and we're still building. And
you grew super quickly, right? You went from...
We did.
Remind us how many lawyers you grew, just so people can get a sense of like y'all are growing and being very intentional.
I mean, just within the last 2 years, we've added like 15 lawyers. So, and there has been, we add and then we lose.
Growing
and
pains.
We add and then we lose. But what we're trying to really develop at our firm is to add value to people. Like I really truly believe that the folks that decided to leave, that we have contributed something to their career. We have somehow made them better lawyers, so they're going out with skills that they didn't have when they were working with me, and before they started working for us. So I just think that you can't be worried about something like that. You can't be worried about turnover. You cannot be worried about transitions. You just have to plan and try to have enough processes in place and just try to add value to people that you're working with.
How do you not get in your head about... I'm in my head constantly if I've been hired by a new client and then they never hire me again, I'll kind of stop and think, looking down the road, I'm like, whatever happened to that person? And they must have not liked me.
It's personal. I always take it personal. I was, I was super sad about it because I care about all of them.
You're like, why don't you want to work with me?
No, you need to look at it like, oh, it was their problem, not mine. Yeah. They had the problem. I'm perfectly fine.
There's got to be a mix, right, though? Yeah. I think that's funny, Lisa, what you're saying. It's true. I think that's helpful to move on. But there has to be some level of introspection. Like, is there something that I can do a little bit differently if I got no repeat business? Maybe I'm the common denominator.
I think that's part of having resilience, right? That's part of growing as a person, growing as a leader. If something happens like that, you definitely have to look, okay, what are we doing? What can we change? How can we be better? You have to take that, but it can't wipe you out.
Sure.
Yeah. It can't wipe you out.
You have to adapt to, and then who knows, maybe those three were communicating together collectively, and that can breed discontent as well. And while it may seem a challenge at the front end, it may be a blessing long term. Like, because you're looking for really good people that want to grow and go and get into the trial mode. And
yeah, I mean, we really do. We want people that are all in. And this work isn't for everybody. It's hard. It's demanding. We really are trying to set high expectations, and we're not perfect, not by any means. We are still trying to create our systems and our processes to be able to do that. But if you are resilient and these things are going to happen, you just have to take a step back. You have to analyze what happened, and then you have to figure out how to move forward, and you have to do it over and over and over again.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. I heard years ago, and I won't even attempt to try to attribute it to whomever said this, but to grow is to change, and to perfect is to change often. And I think that is so true when you are in business, and you've got to have a baseline. You've got to have your foundation of who you are and the things that are going to make you successful that are inherent to you. But you cannot be afraid to, especially when the little adversities start to pop up, to say, okay, how do I adapt? How do I look at this big picture and think, what can I do a little bit differently? How can I change? And sometimes the answer is, listen, I would do everything exactly the same way, and sometimes shit just happens. But I think kind of doing that check on yourself to say, is there a way that I can kind of grow and change from this, is a good place to start when you're facing some sort of adversity.
And then another way is to hire somebody, put them in that position so you don't have to deal with it. I mean, I'm to the point where I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at.
Maybe I need to hire you to hire somebody to come and help me be a jury consultant.
You need processes. Kellye needs processes because we're not going to be able to clone you. We're not.
I'm just holding out hope that science is like a little bit further along than we may know.
Well, Kellye, I can appreciate where you're coming from, because you hit the nail on the head talking about the court reporter is the court reporter. Yes, attorneys love certain court reporters, but the relationship is with me. I'm not a court reporter. So long as I'm sending qualified people, and if it's a continuation, then we send the same court reporter, Dawn, so you see the same person, hopefully, on a case or on a deposition. But where it changes is in the trial consulting component. So we had a trial business, and you are exactly right. Like, they would fall in love with a specific trial consultant, and they didn't want to use anyone else. And then what would happen is the trial consultant would go start their own business. So it was like, it turns into a revolving door of training trial consultants because it's such a personal relationship.
Yeah, we're not making widgets, right? I mean, it is very specific to a personality, but there's got to be a way, right, that you get to a place where you can trust somebody to show up on time and do sort of the basic things. Dawn, you look like you've really struggled with that particular issue. Every time I say it, you roll your eyes.
Those things that are just so basic.
I know.
Show up on time.
Like, dress appropriately.
I'm just going to say, if they can't do that, they're out.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yes, there's got to be a baseline level of...
There's a theme that falls within our podcast for anyone who listens to all of them. Different things come up time and time again. If you're interviewing and you talk about work-life balance, Dawn and Curtis, they're going to be done.
Yeah.
But we just gave a presentation on work-life balance. It's just completely inconsistent with our message. Let me just say, disclaimer there.
Well, I think let's take a little segue into work-life balance because it is so important. It's important to strive to have some balance, right? We've talked a lot about being your best self enables you to be the best version of yourself for everybody, your clients, your colleagues, your family. But I think that a lot of folks it's very trendy now to think, well, work-life balance is just inherent in any job description and that you are just guaranteed that. And I really strive, and I think that I'm kind of hitting my stride of work-life balance in the sense of there are certain days or times that I protect for things that aren't work-related. But I think that what people need to remember is that it's not inherent. You have to work really, really hard for years maybe to get to a point where you can say, okay, I can have a little balance now. I can afford not to work on Friday mornings.
Work-life integration.
I think that's great.
Trying to jump onto that because I love to work. That whole this whole work-life balance makes work seem negative. It makes work seem completely negative. And it's not if you love what you're doing. That's why I've said before, I'm like, just go. If you hate it so much, go find something else because this is not widgets. Like you said, we're not making widgets. We are interacting with people. We are changing lives. What we do matters. And if you don't have the heart for that, and if you don't really love it, I'm not saying every day is great. Some days completely suck. Absolutely.
But when you start from a place of loving what you do, it makes the little adversities that pop up easier to deal with because it doesn't feel like if you start from a baseline of like, I hate my work and it sucks, then when those adversities pop up, you're going to be even further below your baseline. If you really love and not everybody can do what they love at every season of their life, right? It takes time. Sometimes people really struggle with finding what am I passionate about. But once you do, you've got to put yourself in the best position to manage those little adversities because they're going to pop up.
Got to be resilient.
Indeed, yes.
And I think passion is a word that can be misconstrued because, oh, you know, my daughter, when it was like, I don't want to be in legal, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, you know, I love people. And so court reporting, am I saving the world? You know, well, maybe, yeah, maybe not. But the thing about it is that I'm providing a service that's needed. So I'm really passionate about the business. I'm passionate about taking care of people, about servicing people, and making sure that everything is taken care of from the court reporter standpoint to the client standpoint. But am I passionate about collections? Am I passionate about, you know, entering a new database? You know,
Right.
No, I'm not, you know.
Sometimes I think it's so important just to kind of take a step back and look big picture, right? Not everything is a win. You've got to look big picture and make sure that you're kind of balancing your passion with all the little, you know, stupid things that we have to do.
Or hire somebody to do those things that you're
throw
not
a little
good
money
at.
at the problem is really my favorite way to go about it.
Some people love integrating new softwares and doing collections, I think, right?
Yeah, they're out there.
So I don't know. I mean, I think takeaways are, you know, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a lawyer, if you own any kind of business, you have to be resilient. And how do you go about being resilient? One thing I think is super important is you got to really choose a career that you love, that you care about, that you are all in on, because there are going to be hard days. And then if there are hard days, then take a step back, reevaluate, figure out how you can change, how you can be better, and then go on to the next step. Solve one problem at a time.
One bite at a time.
Don't be afraid to adapt. Communicating through the little adversities that pop up all builds your sort of shield of resiliency.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So go out there and be resilient, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. Facing adversity, being resilient, adapting. Thank you for joining us today. We would love to hear your comments, your questions related to this topic. You can comment below or email us at hello@ladiesinlaw.com. Thank you.
See you next time. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Ladies in Law. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to shake things up in law and business. Don't forget to hit subscribe and let us know what you think. Spread the word and share this podcast with your network. Follow us on socials for all the behind-the-scenes fun and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Until next time, keep rocking it, keep breaking the mold, and as always, keep aspiring to inspire.